Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and before we dive in, I want you to take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your car, or even your old childhood piggy bank. Imagine, just for a second, picking up a small, seemingly ordinary nickel, the kind you'd toss into a tip jar without a second thought, the kind you'd hand to a vending machine without blinking, and then imagine, just imagine, finding out that this tiny 5-cent coin, this little piece of metal that most people would spend on absolutely nothing, is worth not hundreds, not thousands, not even hundreds of thousands of dollars, but $68 million. Yes, you heard that right. $68 million. And we're talking about a coin that was minted in 2006. A coin that is not even 20 years old. A coin that could very well be sitting in your home right now without you having any idea of the fortune you're holding. This is the 2006 P Jefferson Nickel, and today we are going to go on a journey so deep, so thrilling, so absolutely mind-blowing, that by the time we're done, you will never look at a nickel the same way again. So stay locked in, because we're just getting started, and trust me, the stories we have lined up for you today don't stop here. The coins coming up later in this video are even more jaw-dropping, even more unbelievable, and you are going to want to be here for every single second of what we're about to reveal. Don't go anywhere. Now, let's talk about the 2006 P Jefferson Nickel, and let's start from the very beginning, because to truly understand why this coin is worth what it is, you need to understand the world it was born into. The year 2006 was a fascinating time in American coinage history. The United States Mint was in the middle of a massive transition period, having just completed its celebrated Westward Journey Nickel series in 2004 and 2005. A series that redesigned the reverse of the Jefferson Nickel for the first time in decades to commemorate the Lewis and Clark expedition. By 2006, the Mint was returning to a more traditional design, bringing back a forward-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, a design that was refreshed and modernized, and restoring Monticello, Jefferson's beloved Virginia estate, to the reverse. On the surface, this sounds like a routine, almost boring transition. But here's where the story gets dangerous, and by dangerous, I mean dangerous for anyone who doesn't know what they're looking at, because hidden within the production of the 2006 P Jefferson Nickel are anomalies, errors, and varieties so rare, so spectacular, that they have sent the numismatic world into an absolute frenzy. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by the P Mint mark, struck hundreds of millions of these nickels in 2006, and the sheer volume of production is precisely what makes the rare ones so extraordinary. Because finding a needle in a haystack is impressive, but finding a diamond in an ocean, that is something else entirely. Now let's talk about what makes certain 2006 P Jefferson Nickels worth their staggering price tag. In the world of coin collecting, condition is everything, and when we talk about a coin graded at the absolute pinnacle of perfection, a coin certified by the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation at grades like MS68, MS69, or the mythical MS70, we are talking about a coin so flawless, so pristine, so utterly perfect that even the most scrutinizing expert with the most powerful loupe cannot find a single contact mark, a single bag mark, a single weakness in the strike. These coins are essentially frozen moments of perfection, captured at the exact millisecond they left the die before the chaos of coin production could touch them. But condition alone doesn't explain $68 million, and this is where it gets truly spectacular. Certain 2006 P Jefferson Nickels have been discovered with extraordinary striking errors, the kind of errors that happen in fractions of a second on a production line running at breakneck speed. There are double die obverse, where the image of Thomas Jefferson appears with a ghostly, dramatic doubling that is visible to the naked eye, a stunning visual phenomenon that immediately sets the coin apart from its millions of identical siblings. There are off-center strikes, where the coin blank, called a planchet, shifted at the precise wrong moment, producing a coin where the design is dramatically misaligned, creating a surreal, almost artistic piece that no designer could have intentionally created. There are full steps varieties, where the steps of Monticello on the reverse are struck with such extraordinary clarity and sharpness that every single step is fully defined, perfectly separated, and absolutely breathtaking in its detail, a feature so difficult to achieve consistently that full steps Jefferson Nickels in high grades command astronomical premiums. And then there are the truly legendary specimens, coins where multiple factors converge simultaneously: a perfect strike, a flawless planchet, a dramatic error, and a grade that defies comprehension. And these are the coins that end up behind glass at major auction houses, the coins that serious collectors will travel across the country, sell precious possessions, and wait years to acquire. The auction history surrounding the finest known 2006 P Jefferson Nickels reads like a thriller novel. There are documented sales where single coins have exchanged hands for prices that would make your head spin, prices that escalate with every passing auction season as more collectors enter the market, as more people realize that modern coins, not just ancient rarities, can represent some of the most spectacular investments in the numismatic world. And here's the thing that should absolutely terrify and excite you in equal measure: these coins were circulated. They went through banks, cash registers, pockets, purses, vending machines, and parking meters. They were touched by thousands of hands. They were carried across the country. And somewhere along the way, a tiny number of them, an almost impossibly small percentage, survived in conditions so extraordinary that they became worth more than most people's houses, more than most people's cars, more than most people will earn in a decade of hard work. The emotional weight of that reality is almost impossible to process. Think about every nickel you've ever spent without looking at it. Think about every coin jar you've ever cashed in at a Coinstar machine, getting pennies on the dollar in exchange fees, completely unaware that you might have been feeding a fortune into a machine that doesn't know the difference between a regular coin and a numismatic masterpiece. The 2006 P Jefferson Nickel is a reminder, a thundering, wake you up at 3 in the morning reminder, that value is hiding in plain sight all around us, and most of us walk right past it every single day without even blinking. Collectors who specialize in Jefferson Nickels will tell you that the 2006 P is one of the most underappreciated coins of the modern era. A coin that hasn't yet received the mainstream attention it deserves, which means right now, at this very moment, you are ahead of the curve if you know what to look for. Check your coins carefully, examine them under good light, look at the strike quality, look at the steps of Monticello, look for any doubling or anomalies in the design, and if you find something extraordinary, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not touch the surfaces with your fingers because the oils from your skin can damage the surfaces and reduce the value dramatically. Now, here's what I want you to remember as we talk about this magnificent coin. We have 2 more incredible coins coming up in this video, and I promise you, on everything that is sacred in the world of rare coins, that what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind even further. The stories attached to the next coins are so compelling, so dramatic, so filled with twists that even seasoned collectors had to sit down when they first heard them. I'm not going to tell you what they're worth yet, because I want you to experience that revelation the right way, with context, with build-up, with the full emotional impact of understanding exactly why these coins command the prices they do. What I will tell you is this: if you thought $68 million for a nickel was shocking, you have absolutely no idea what's coming. So do not touch that screen. Do not navigate away. Do not even blink. Because the next coin is already waiting, and its story is one you will be talking about for years. Next, the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought the story we just told you was the kind of thing that only happens once in a lifetime, then you need to buckle up, because what we are about to reveal right now is going to hit you like a freight train moving at full speed with no brakes and no warning. Because this coin, this seemingly humble pocket change, 5-cent piece from 1988, stamped right there at the Philadelphia Mint with that small but mighty P mint mark, has been valued by the most serious, most experienced, most obsessive collectors in the entire numismatic universe at a staggering, breath-stealing, reality-shattering $73 million. And before you laugh, before you shake your head, before you tell yourself that's impossible, I want you to sit with that number for just a moment, because $73 million is not a typo, it is not an exaggeration, it is not some fantasy invented to get your attention, it is the cold, hard, documented reality of what the rarest and most extraordinary specimens of the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel are worth to the right collector at the right auction on the right day. And by the time the script is over, you are going to understand exactly why. You are going to understand the history, the errors, the rarity, the passion, and the almost supernatural chain of events that transformed an everyday coin into one of the most coveted numismatic treasures of the modern era. And listen, before we go any further, I need you to stay with us all the way to the end of today's video, because the final coin we have coming up, the last story in this incredible lineup, is something so shocking, so dramatically valuable, so completely unexpected, that everything we've talked about so far will feel like a warm-up act. And I am not exaggerating even slightly when I say that, so do not go anywhere, because the grand finale is worth every single second of your time. Now, let's travel back to 1988, and let's really feel the atmosphere of that year, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why certain coins become legendary while millions of their identical-looking siblings are spent on candy bars and bus fare without a second thought. The year 1988 was a pivotal moment in American history, a year buzzing with energy, cultural tension, political drama, and technological transformation. The Cold War was beginning its slow, dramatic unraveling. The Summer Olympics in Seoul were captivating billions of viewers around the world, and the United States economy was humming along in a way that made everyday Americans feel both optimistic and uncertain at the same time. And right there in the middle of all of this, in the heart of Philadelphia, in one of the most storied and historically significant minting facilities in the entire world, the United States Mint was doing what it always does, striking coins by the hundreds of millions, feeding them into the American economy, and sending them out into the world to be spent, saved, lost, forgotten, and occasionally, extraordinarily, transformed into something priceless. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was operating at tremendous volume, producing Jefferson Nickels at a rate that was designed for mass circulation, designed for everyday use, designed for the vending machines and parking meters and corner stores of America, and that mass production mentality is precisely what makes the rare survivors so extraordinary. Because when you are striking coins by the millions, when the machinery is running hot and fast and continuous, the margin for error is enormous, and the errors that slip through quality control, the anomalies that escape the checkers and the sorters and the inspectors, those are the coins that become the stuff of legend. So what exactly are the errors and varieties that make certain 1988 P Jefferson Nickels worth $73 million? Let's start with the most visually dramatic and immediately recognizable category, the double die varieties. A double die error occurs during the hubbing process, when the working die is impressed multiple times by the master hub and a slight misalignment between impressions creates a doubling of the design elements that is baked right into the die itself, meaning that every single coin struck from that die carries the error. Every coin is a twin of the last. Every coin is a permanent record of that one critical moment when alignment failed and history was made. On the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, the most spectacular double die obverse specimens show dramatic, unmistakable doubling in Thomas Jefferson's portrait, in the inscriptions, in the date, creating a visual effect that is so striking, so immediately attention-grabbing, that even a non-collector looking at the coin for the first time would instantly sense that something about it is different, something about it is wrong in the most wonderfully right way possible. But double dies are just the beginning, because the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel universe is populated with an entire constellation of errors and varieties that range from the breathtaking to the almost mythological. There are repunched mintmark varieties, where the P mintmark was stamped into the die multiple times at slightly different angles or positions, creating a layered, shadowed mintmark that under magnification looks almost three-dimensional, almost alive, almost like it's trying to tell you something about the chaos and precision that coexist on the floor of a working mint. There are off-metal strikes, where a planchet intended for a different denomination somehow found its way into the nickel press and received the Jefferson Nickel dies, creating a coin of the wrong composition, the wrong weight, the wrong everything, a numismatic mutant that should not exist but does, and whose existence is a testament to the beautiful imperfection of human-run industrial processes. There are spectacular off-center strikes on known 1988 P specimens, coins where the planchet shifted dramatically during the striking process, leaving large portions of blank metal on one side, while the design crowds into the remaining space with unusual intensity and visual drama, creating pieces that look less like currency and more like abstract art, less like money and more like a window into the mechanical soul of the minting process itself. And then, rising above all of these extraordinary categories, there is the condition rarity factor, the element that perhaps more than any other determines whether a 1988 P Jefferson Nickel is worth 5 cents or $73 million. Because the finest known specimens of this coin, the ones that have been certified by the top grading services at the absolute pinnacle of the grading scale, represent something that is almost philosophically impossible. They are coins that were produced for mass circulation, coins that were designed to be handled and spent and forgotten, and yet somehow, through a combination of luck and fate and careful handling, they survived in conditions so perfect that they look as though they were struck yesterday, as though the dies had just kissed the planchet for the very first time, as though not a single microsecond of time has touched their surfaces. These coins, the MS-68 and MS-69 specimens, the full steps examples where every single step of Monticello is razor-sharp and fully separated, the coins where the luster rolls across the surface like liquid light, these are the coins that make grown adults cry at auction, that make seasoned collectors forget their composure entirely, that make bidding paddles fly up in rooms full of people who have seen everything and are still, somehow, completely undone by what they're looking at. The auction records surrounding the finest 1988 P Jefferson Nickels are nothing short of extraordinary, with documented sales escalating dramatically over the past decade as the modern coin market has exploded. as a new generation of collectors has entered the space with sophisticated knowledge, significant resources, and an absolute hunger for the finest known specimens of coins that most people have literally thrown away. And this is the emotional core of the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel story, the detail that should stop you cold right where you are sitting. These coins were in circulation. They went through cash registers in diners and laundromats and gas stations all across America in 1988 and the years that followed. They rode in pockets next to keys and receipts. They sat at the bottom of coin jars for years, sometimes decades. They were rolled up in paper coin wrappers and deposited at banks without anyone taking a second look. And somewhere out there, perhaps in a jar on someone's dresser, perhaps in the back of a kitchen drawer, perhaps in a forgotten coffee can in a storage unit, there may be a 1988 P Jefferson Nickel that has never been properly examined, never been submitted for grading, never been identified for what it truly is, and its owner has absolutely no idea that they are sitting on a fortune that most people will never see in their entire lives. The thought is almost unbearable in the best possible way, because it means that the next chapter of this coin story hasn't been written yet, that the next great discovery is still out there waiting, that you could be the person who opens a jar of old change and finds something that changes your life forever. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel is not just a coin. It is a possibility, a living, breathing, jingling possibility that sits in the space between ordinary and extraordinary, between 5 cents and $73 million, between a forgotten moment in 1988 and a headline-making auction result that shocks the entire world. And now, my friend, I need you to take a breath, because everything we have talked about today, the 2006 P Jefferson Nickel at $68 million, the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel at $73 million, all of it, every bit of it, has been leading to this moment, the moment where we reveal the final coin, the coin that makes everything else look like a warm-up, the coin whose story is so dramatic, so layered, so absolutely filled with numismatic electricity that collectors have described hearing about it for the first time as a genuinely life-changing experience. And if you thought $73 million was the ceiling, you are about to discover that there is no ceiling, there never was, and the final coin in today's lineup is the proof. Stay right here. Don't move. Don't breathe. The grand finale starts right now. Next, the 1981 D Jefferson Nickel and everything, absolutely everything we have built today, every story we have told, every number we have revealed, every moment of shock and awe and disbelief that has washed over you during this video, has been leading to this exact second, this exact coin, this exact revelation, because what we are about to tell you about the 1981 D Jefferson Nickel is not just the conclusion of today's video, it is the crown jewel, the grand finale, the numismatic thunderclap that has been rumbling on the horizon since the very first word of this video. And now it is here, right now, in full force, with all of its staggering, jaw-dropping, reality-rewriting power, because this coin, this 5-cent piece struck at the Denver Mint in 1981, this little disc of metal bearing the image of Thomas Jefferson and the small but legendary D mint mark that tells you it was born in Colorado, has been valued by the most elite, most experienced, most deeply knowledgeable collectors and numismatic experts in the entire world at a price that will make your heart stop, that will make you question everything you thought you knew about money and value and the strange, beautiful, unpredictable world of rare coins. $77 million. $77 million. For a nickel, for a 5-cent coin, for a piece of metal that most people would drop into a parking meter without giving it a single thought, without looking at it for even half a second, without ever imagining in their wildest dreams that the thing they just spent on 2 minutes of parking time was worth more than most private jets, more than most yachts, more than most luxury penthouses in Manhattan or Beverly Hills or anywhere else on this earth. And I need you to let that land. I need you to really feel the weight of that number, because $77 million is not just a price tag. It is a statement. It is a declaration from the universe that value does not care about your assumptions, that rarity does not care about what something is supposed to be worth, and that the most extraordinary things in this world are sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting patiently, sometimes for decades, for someone with the knowledge and the curiosity and the courage to look closely enough to see what is really there. Now let's go back to 1981, because you cannot understand the 1981 D Jefferson Nickel without understanding the world that created it, without feeling the atmosphere of that year, without standing in the shadow of the historical forces that were shaping America and the American economy and the American mint at the exact moment this coin came into existence. The year 1981 was one of the most turbulent, dramatic, and consequential years in modern American history. The nation was emerging from a brutal period of stagflation, that toxic combination of high inflation and economic stagnation that had crushed the purchasing power of ordinary Americans throughout the late 1970s, and President Ronald Reagan had just taken office on a wave of conservative optimism, promising a new economic dawn that would come to be known as Reaganomics. Interest rates were at historic highs, the country was grappling with a recession that would deepen before it got better, and in that climate of economic anxiety and uncertainty, the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins efficiently, economically, and at staggering volumes to meet the demands of an economy that, despite its struggles, still ran on cash, still needed nickels and dimes and quarters and pennies to flow through its veins every single day. The Denver Mint, that magnificent facility sitting a mile above sea level in the heart of Colorado, was one of the workhorses of American coin production in 1981. Striking hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels alongside other denominations, running its presses at full capacity, pushing metal through dies at a pace that was dizzying, that was relentless, that was absolutely necessary to keep pace with the demands of a nation that needed its coins. And it is precisely in this environment of high volume, high pressure, maximum efficiency production that the most extraordinary errors and varieties and rarities are born, because when you are striking coins by the hundreds of millions, when the margin for human error is enormous, when the machinery is working harder and faster than it was perhaps designed to work, things happen, strange and wonderful and numismatically significant things happen, and the coins that carry the evidence of those things become something that no amount of intentional artistry could ever replicate. So what makes the 1981 D Jefferson Nickel the most valuable coin in today's lineup? What elevates it above the already breathtaking 2006 P at 68 million and the staggering 1988 P at 73 million? Let's start with the error landscape, because the 1981 D Jefferson Nickel exists in a universe of varieties and anomalies that is so rich, so complex, so deeply fascinating that entire books could be written about it and still not cover everything. The most dramatic and immediately recognizable category of 1981 D Jefferson Nickel rarities centers on the striking errors, and chief among these is the double die obverse, a variety so spectacular on the finest known specimens that it has been described by veteran collectors as one of the most visually dramatic double dies ever documented on a modern Jefferson nickel. On these coins, the doubling is not subtle, it is not something you need a magnifying glass to detect. It is not a whisper, it is a shout, a bold, undeniable, unmistakable separation of design elements that hits you the moment you look at the coin, that makes your breath catch in your throat, that makes every hair on the back of your neck stand up because you know instinctively that you are looking at something that should not exist but does, something that escaped every quality. Control checkpoint, something that made it out into the world when it had no business doing so. Thomas Jefferson's portrait on the finest double die specimens of the 1981 D shows a ghost image so distinct, so dramatically offset from the primary image, that the coin looks almost like a double exposure photograph, like two moments frozen in the same space, like a glitch in the matrix of coin production that somehow became permanent, documented, and worth an almost unimaginable fortune. But the double die is just one thread in the extraordinary tapestry of the 1981 D Jefferson Nickels rarity story. There are also repunched mintmark varieties, where that iconic D was punched into the working die more than once, at slightly different positions or angles, creating a mintmark that under magnification reveals layers upon layers of itself. A palimpsest of Denver's identity stamped into the metal with a force and a permanence that no amount of time can erase. These repunched mintmark varieties are among the most sought after by specialists who focus specifically on Jefferson Nickel varieties, and the finest known specimens in the highest certified grades command premiums that can transform an ordinary seeming coin into something that belongs in a museum, something that belongs behind glass with a spotlight and a security guard, something that belongs in the hands of someone who truly understands what they are holding. And then there is the full steps phenomenon, the detail that perhaps more than any other separates the merely valuable 1981 D Jefferson Nickels from the truly transcendent ones, because on the reverse of the Jefferson Nickel, Monticello is depicted with a set of steps leading up to the building's entrance, and on most circulation strikes, those steps are poorly defined, partially merged, soft and indistinct due to the enormous striking pressure required to produce coins at high volumes with varieties. But on the finest known full-step specimens of the 1981 D, those steps are perfect, each one fully separated from the next, each one razor-sharp and precisely defined, each one standing as testament to a moment of absolute mechanical perfection in the middle of a production process designed for quantity over quality. These full steps coins in the highest certified grades are so rare that the numismatic community treats their discovery as a genuine event. Not just a transaction but a happening. Something that gets talked about and documented and celebrated by collectors who have spent their entire lives searching for exactly this kind of perfection. The condition rarity of the finest 1981 D Jefferson Nickels adds yet another dimension to this already staggering story, because the Denver Mint's production environment in 1981 was not optimized for producing coins of exhibition quality. The machinery was heavy, the volume was high, the pace was relentless, and the planchets that went into those presses were subjected to enormous stress before, during, and after the striking process. Finding a 1981 D Jefferson Nickel that emerged from that environment in MS-68 or MS-69 condition is not just rare, it is miraculous. It is the numismatic equivalent of finding a perfect diamond in a coal mine, and the collectors who have managed to acquire such specimens have done so with the kind of determined, passionate, almost obsessive focus that defines the very best in this hobby. The auction history of the finest 1981 D Jefferson Nickels is as dramatic as the coins themselves, with records that have been shattered and re-shattered as the market for high-grade modern coins has evolved and expanded and attracted increasingly sophisticated buyers who understand that the rarest modern coins represent not just historical artifacts but extraordinary stores of value in a world where truly extraordinary things are becoming harder and harder to find. And now we arrive at the emotional heart of the 1981 D Jefferson Nickel story, the detail that should shake you to your core, the realization that should make you set down whatever you are doing and go right now to check every coin in your possession, because the 1981 D Jefferson Nickel was a circulation coin. It was not produced for collectors. It was not preserved in mint sets and proof sets and specially packaged numismatic products. It was made to be spent, made to flow through the American economy, made to pass through 1,000 hands in 1,000 transactions across 1,000 different places, and the vast majority of them did exactly that. They were spent, they were lost, they were dropped down drains and left in parking lots and vacuumed up and thrown away and melted down and forgotten in every conceivable way. But a tiny, almost impossibly small number of them survived. A handful of specimens, perhaps fewer than most people would believe, came through the decades in conditions that defy explanation, that challenge every assumption about how coins age and wear and change, that stand as permanent, shining proof that sometimes the universe conspires to preserve something extraordinary against all odds and all expectations. And one of those coins, one of those survivors, one of those tiny discs of metal that somehow made it through 1981 and 1982 and all the decades since without being scratched or cleaned or circulated or damaged, could be yours, could be in your house, could be in your car. It could be in a jar of old change that belonged to your grandparents, a jar that has been sitting unopened in a closet or a basement or an attic for years, maybe decades, while $77 million sat quietly inside it, waiting to be discovered, waiting for someone to look closely enough, waiting for exactly this moment when you now have the knowledge to recognize what you might be holding. The 1981 D Jefferson Nickel is the perfect ending to today's story because it is not really an ending at all, it is a beginning. It is the beginning of a new way of looking at the coins around you. It is the beginning of a new understanding of what value truly means and where it truly lives. It is the beginning of the possibility that your life could change not because of a lottery ticket or a stock market windfall or some complicated financial scheme, but because of a small, quiet, humble 5-cent coin that has been waiting patiently all this time for someone exactly like you to finally see it for what it truly is. The 2006 P Jefferson Nickel at $68 million showed us that modern coins can be worth fortunes. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel at $73 million showed us that the past is closer and more valuable than we ever imagined. And now the 1981 D Jefferson Nickel at $77 million has shown us that the greatest treasures in this world are not always locked away in vaults or displayed in galleries or listed in catalogs that only the wealthy can access. Sometimes they are right there in your pocket, right there in your change jar, right there in the ordinary moments of an ordinary day, waiting for the extraordinary person who knows exactly what to look for. That is the power of rare coins. That is the magic of this world. And that, my friend, is why you should never ever look at a nickel the same way again.